Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here to hear and discuss all these informative papers, including the last one from Justin, which again points out that those are most oppressed are going to suffer the most under climate change. Also, a quick note to the interpreters: the paper I'm presenting is a reduced form version of my longer paper. So I will try to talk slow so you can interpret it. And also, thank you for all the work you've done interpreting the other papers. So, getting back to the program, I've been asked to speak about how to collaborate in the field with those people who are most oppressed by colonization and are now also dealing with climate change. So how can we develop adaptive strategies for these people that can be implemented in a scientifically sound, equitable, and culturally relevant manner to help them deal with the threat of the present and future climate? And I'm going to give several case studies. The first one is in Burkina Faso. Most African livelihood depend upon rain-fed agriculture, but it's been shown that seasonal rainfall forecasts for the farmers, seasonal forecast of the rain might help the farmers. But such forecasts themselves not make up for issues such as lack of credit and technology and existence of weak institutions and racial discrimination. Forecasts have been shown to be of value. Burkina Faso, a former French colony, is a landlocked nation south of the Sahara Desert, part of the Sahel-Sudan climate belt from Senegal to Chad. Rain falls in the summer from intense storms. It ranges from 100 centimeters in the south to about 40 centimeters in the north. There's extreme variability within a season, as well as over years. 80% of the farmers are rain-fed subsistence farmers. With climate change, droughts will significantly increase, as well as variability. Presently, about 20 to 50% of the farmers in Burkina Faso obtain probabilistic rainfall forecasts for the summer from local radio. However, back in 1998, when our project started, none were receiving them, despite such forecasts being produced by the international meteorological community for the various agroecological zones of Burkina Faso. The challenge our research team faced was how to deliver these scientific forecasts into the hands of subsistence farmers in Burkina Faso and make them useful for them. For a local trusted partner who could help us access villages in Burkina Faso, we chose Plan International, a non-governmental organization that takes a whole village approach to supporting children. We need an interdisciplinary team of international and in-country experts. No one discipline could address this. Thus, we had an anthropologist, an agronomist, a veterinarian, and myself, a water resources engineer. The in-country Burkinabe team included a meteorologist, a water resource engineer, an agronomist from the government, and 3 full-time facilitators, one for each of the agroecological zones of Burkina Faso. One phase of the project was actually to deliver forecasts to farmers in a managed process so we could evaluate how to best disseminate them and the results of their use. Here we used a participatory workshop process where we purposely chose participants to represent men and women from the various ethnic groups and gave them stipends for their participation. About 20 lead farmers from 3 villages in each agroecological zone attended a workshop where the forecast was first presented and discussed with an exercise to convey its probabilistic nature. Then the farmers shared with us and discussed with other farmers how they might adjust their farming practices. Farmers were never given recommendations on adjustments because all farmers have their own risk tolerances and incentives and obstacles. Farmers also discussed how to disseminate the forecast in their home villages. Results of this process were that farmers understood the forecast and in varying ways modified their production strategies in response to it. We also learned that involvement of users in production and dissemination of climate applications ensure the relevance of information content and appropriateness of communication formats and channels. The process can also foster local ownership of forecast dissemination efforts and generate trust in the process, which is essential for turning the inevitable failures of forecasts into opportunities for learning. Continuity of this research over an approximately 10-year period was extremely important. This allowed researchers to make regular trips to the field and win the support of local authorities and community leaders and develop relationships with the farmers who spearheaded forecast dissemination in each village. My other example is from East Boston in the northeastern United States. Most of the world's population now lives in urban areas, and most of that population is along the coast. Coastal urban areas are exposed to both the inland impacts of climate change, such as extreme temperatures, and coastal impacts, such as severe flooding from coastal storms. Unfortunately, many members of populations that have been marginalized or oppressed live in these most flood-prone areas. To understand more about these impacts of flood threats on these populations and start to ameliorate them, my colleagues and I have been working in the East Boston neighborhood of Boston on the northeast coast of the United States since 2008. Because most of East Boston is on a peninsula built on fill, it is vulnerable to present and increased coastal flooding due to climate change and sea level rise. Sea level rise might increase 60 centimeters to 200 centimeters above present levels by the end of this century. East Boston is currently home to 40,000 people as a mix of residential neighborhoods, commercial industrial areas, and major regional transportation assets. It has high concentrations of different types of socially vulnerable populations, some of the densest in Boston. It has always been an immigrant community. Most of the residents today are from presently unstable and insecure countries in Central America and work in service jobs outside of East Boston. The community has suffered many environmental injustices over time. Also, parts of East Boston are undergoing rapid gentrification, particularly along the waterfront. The first action of our interdisciplinary team, again, was to select a local trusted partner to collaborate with us and to introduce us to the neighborhood. We chose the neighborhood of affordable housing because of their whole community approach to striving to improve the quality of life for low income and marginalized East Boston residents. Initially, we listened to the residents about their knowledge of climate change in general, and then about the threats of present increased coastal flooding. For each workshop, with a group of attendees purposely selected to represent the myriad of interests in the community, as we did in Burkina Faso, we provided stipends, meals, childcare, and translation, and scheduled around their time and locations best for them. We learned that residents appeared to be empowered by the knowledge they gained during the workshop and wanted to take action. The residents professed, however, having little power over the management of their community. They are generally renters with limited economic, political, and social resources. It appears to them that adaptation decisions to deal with climate change will be made by processes, institutions, and individuals over whom they have no influence. In response to this information from residents, we launched a collaborative planning process with residents, other non-governmental organizations, government officials, because it was apparent that residents wanted to engage the organizations that are actually implementing and financing adaptation in East Boston. Therefore, we set up the Adaptation Planning Working Group, which include representatives from the city, major transportation agencies, gas and electric utilities, and Logan Airport. as well as community representatives from each of the major areas of East Boston. The group met regularly for several years, joined to discuss adaptation options for East Boston, sometimes in larger workshops with more community members. For some of the agency representatives from the government, it was the first time they had conversations directly with community members. The participation in this working group, community members found they could influence the type and timing of planning and implementation efforts of the multiple participating city and state agencies responsible for civil rights and asset protection in East Boston in a manner that would also provide co-benefits to the community. For example, there was a small project. The first adaptation project of the city of Boston was actually constructed in East Boston as a result of this meeting group, and is now high priority for the current city administration. My last example is the Stone Living Lab partnership in Boston Harbor. This is also based upon community engagement, but in this example, the community is actually helping to define the research agenda. One of the outcomes of our research in East Boston was that the marginalized population there was eager to meet some of their community's flood management needs using nature-based approaches rather than hard structures such as concrete seawalls. This is also the case in many other parts of Boston and the world. Nature-based approaches are engineered systems that mimic the characteristics of a natural ecosystem, such as a barrier beach, a marsh, an elevated dune, or a reef. And these nature-based approaches can be engineered to be implemented in an urban environment by constructing such as an elevated park or berm. These nature-based approaches offer many important advantages as long-term resilience solutions. They offer these solutions better than traditional approaches, such as concrete seawalls. For example, a nature-based approach, because it's natural, reduces wave energy and flood risk. But they also can cool the air, create communal green space, and also help restore ecosystems. These are all extremely important in low-income communities. Also, nature-based approaches have the potential to independently adjust to changing climate conditions, just as a natural system would. And these nature-based approaches can also grow stronger over time instead of weakening with age, such as a concrete structure would. And finally, these nature-based approaches can be less expensive to implement than traditional structures. Yet gaps remain in our global understanding how to best design and maintain these approaches and how to ensure their potential social and ecological co-benefits occur in addition to flood protection. To address these research needs, the Stone Living Lab was founded in Boston in 2020 with a visionary and generous support of the James N. and Catherine D. Stone Foundation. And I am actually honored today that Jim and Kathy Stone, the philanthropists who seeded the lab, are here with us today, right in front of me. So again, thank you very much. I support your vision and support. Thank you for your vision and support. The Stone Living Lab is a unique partnership that brings together natural and social scientists, researchers, nonprofit organizations, excuse me, city and state government and federal government, indigenous people to the same table to develop a coastal resilience agenda for Greater Boston in collaboration with community groups and many other organizations. The activities of the Stone Living Lab are purposely designed to meet the needs of stakeholders in the region, focusing on those who are impacted first and worst, and serves as a global example of collaborative research and engagement that can benefit oppressed populations everywhere. For example, one key project is studying what community members in Boston's diverse urban setting believe to be their key social, economic, and political challenges in adopting nature-based approaches to managing coastal flooding. Our interviews reveal concerns about financing, state and federal regulatory limitations, addressing patterns of inequity and preventing further disparities, and also dealing with the potential negative environmental and human impacts of flooding. Understanding and addressing these concerns is pivotal to the success of widespread nature-based adaptation in Boston and cities around the world. Many of our projects in the Stone Living Lab also involve local youth by our school and volunteer community science projects. We have found that youth are very interested in workforce development and action on climate change, and we're developing undergraduate internships through which students can work on projects related to climate science, policy, and education. Getting the hands-on training they need to become part of the workforce to tackle climate issues. So in summary, from these 3 case studies, the methods we have used for scientists in marginalized and oppressed communities to collaboratively implement scientifically sound, equitable, and culturally relevant adaptation strategies, we found them to be successful. And of course, these strategies are used by many others in dealing with adaptation planning. But to summarize, some of the principal collaborative elements include, first of all, we needed a local trusted partner. We introduced the scientists, the local community, and ensure the project remains relevant. An interdisciplinary team is needed because no one discipline can address these challenges. And of course, the process must start by the scientific team listening to the community. And there must be constant respect for local knowledge and values. And there has to be co-production, new knowledge and approaches. Also, continuity of research over the years must be provided to the scientists, the local community can learn to trust and educate each other and continuously upgrade our strategy. Finally, opportunities should be developed to bring the local community into the decision-making process, improve the capacity of local partners or institutions, and bring in new and previously less involved but important stakeholders into the process. Engaging youth in projects helps to engage their families and also to build future climate change workforce. Finally, scientific research is that being done by the groundbreaking Stone Living Lab can be designed and amplified to meet the needs of urban marginalized populations by collaboration and partnership with the impacted stakeholders to actually design a scientific research agenda. The lessons learned from such processes in Boston can be scaled up globally. Thank you very much for your attention.